Now we're taking a look at sounds in context, phrase by phrase 3, and this is where we are trying to identify the H sounds. So underline the sounds, the ones that we pronounce clearly. And you'll remember that these are words where the H begins a content word, at the beginning of a content word. That's one case. The other case is where the begins a function word at the beginning of a phrase. So those are the ones that you underlined. And then you drew a slash through the ones that are reduced, that have disappeared. They have disappeared, and instead these are linked together with the previous word. This occurs where the H begins a function word that's not at the beginning, but it's in the middle of the phrase. It's not at the beginning, but it's somewhere in the middle of a phrase. So when you can omit the pronoun he, his, or her, you can omit the H sound, the H sound. Or in auxiliary words like has and have and had, if it's an auxiliary, then you can link it to the word just before it. Now you practice this with your partner, you identified them, you looked at my answer key. Now I'm going to read you the story, and I'm going to exaggerate the when I need to, and I'm going to exaggerate the linking and no H in those cases. All right, so I'm going to say the story again, and this time listen for H or no H. John Thornton saved Buck's life, but further, he was the perfect master. He, beginning of a phrase. Other men looked after their dogs because they thought it was their duty and because it was good for their business. John Thornton looked after his dogs, inside the phrase. Looked after his dogs, omit the H, link it after his. John Thornton looked after his dogs as if they were his own children. Were his own. That's inside the phrase. Becaus'ee, that's inside the phrase. Because he couldn't help it. Help, that's a content word. That's a verb. So you have to pronounce the H in that one. And he saw further. This one we can link because it's inside the phrase. And he saw further. New phrase, new sentence. He never forgot a kind word, and to sit down for a long talk with them was his delight as much as theirs. Even though this is a function word, this one is spoken with great stress because it is contrasted. His delight as much as theirs. When we emphasize something for a reason, then we need to pronounce all of the sounds, including the H sound. Was his delight as much as theirs. He had a way of taking Buck's head. He, beginning of the sentence, had, content word, verb. He had a way of taking Buck's head, content word, roughly between his hands. Hands, content word. His, function word, between his. We can omit that H. Between his hands. And resting his own head upon Buck's. His can become is. Resting is. Resting his own head, content word, resting his own head upon Buck's. He would shake Buck back and forth. He, at the beginning of the sentence, at the beginning of the phrase, he would shake Buck back and forth all the time, calling him bad names. Calling him. This is an object pronoun. It's in the phrase calling him. Calling him bad names, which to Buck were love names. Buck knew no greater joy than his master's rough embrace and name-calling. Than is. Omit the H there. That H disappears. No greater joy than his master's rough embrace and name-calling. At each pull back and forth, it seemed that his heart, content word, that is, his, no H, that is, link. It seemed that his heart would be shaken out of his body, out of his, no H there, it's within the phrase, out of his body. For his joy was so great. For his. This H disappears. For his joy was so great. And when John Thornton let him go, let him. Link that over, no H. Let him go. Buck sprang to his feet. Buck sprang to his feet. His mouth laughed. At the beginning of a phrase. His mouth laughed. His eyes sparkled. Beginning of a phrase. But how about the next one? and is. This is inside the phrase. And his throat vibrated with unspoken sounds, so that H you can make disappear and link. In that manner, Buck remained without moving, so that John Thornton would cry, God, you can almost speak.